Hey, it's Derek Richards. It's a drink with Derek. Hanging out here with good buddy of mine, Jason Allen King. Before we get to my esteemed guest, I'll let you know that all the episodes of A Drink with Derek can be found on YouTube. And just go on YouTube, type in A Drink with Derek, and you'll find all the fantastic episodes that we have up there. Oh, look at you actually writing it down. I like you. I appreciate your attention to detail. JasonAllenKing.com is his website. Jason Allen with an E, Allen, JasonAllenKing.com, who is out of Charlotte, North Carolina right now, originally from a small town up in Pennsylvania. And I will say this before we go any further, you are the most stately guest that I have had based on your surroundings. It looks like you are in a like a law office. Right.
That's right. Yeah. That's my
I
goal.
will be talking to you right now about obtaining a trademark.
That's right. Yeah. You need any help with passing on wealth from family and something like that. I'm your guy. I'm definitely your guy.
Well, the setting behind you've got a map right behind your head,
Yep.
which normally most of my guests are, have like some inappropriate calendar from a strip club that they got back in 1994, and they simply will not take it down because they love the girl who was on July. So she's gonna stay. But you've got a map behind you, which is a map of.
It's a map of Paris. Yep.
Of Paris, okay, and then over what will be your left shoulder, right there. Yeah,
right.
That is.
That's Uncle Henry, right there.
Uncle Henry.
That's Uncle Henry. That was hung at my grandparents' house since long before I was born. They've always called it Uncle Henry. That I don't think it's actually my uncle, but I choose to believe that I will look like that one day. If I'm lucky, I will look like Van Gogh's grandfather. I don't know what's going on there, but he's awesome. And he looks at you when you walk around the room. I'm pretty sure it's out of a Scooby-Doo cartoon, I think is what really that's from. The eyes are cut out and you can get behind it. So
that looks exactly. I didn't want to be disrespectful because at first I thought it was your actual uncle, and I didn't want to be a complete douchebag. But no, now it literally looks like when you go to Disney and you go to the haunted house and you walk around and the eyes in there are following you the whole time. It's that illusion that they have going there. That's exactly what that looks like. But I think not for nothing, you should just try to grow in that beard and mustache and get a beret.
I already got the beret. The beret, I had that already. That was no problem. It's getting that beard to grow like that. I have started it a little bit after our week.
After our week down in Florida. We had a great time in Florida in Port Charlotte, Florida. We were hanging out there for a week at Vasani Comedy Dinner Theater. You and I found a couple of spots to have it was a drink with Derek and Jason.
That's what it was.
It wasn't just a drink with Derek. We ended up finding the place that had the worst band ever, which was right next to the hotel. I'm not going to mention the name of the bar, but you could, if you're in Punta Gorda, Florida, and you hear a really loud, shitty band on I think it was Wednesday, you would go there.
Yes, it was. Not only was it bad, but it was so loud that the entire city of Punta Gorda had a bit of a beat to it, thanks to that awful band. Remember, we thought it was karaoke when we first rounded the corner.
Yeah, we were around the corner, and you're like, "Oh wow, karaoke!" And we walked in there. I'm like, "Oh no, that's like people getting paid to do this. This is horrible.
There's money changing hands because of this sound." All right, good.
That singer, she must have COVID or something because it's destroying. I don't know if the Rona's tearing up your vocal cords, but That did not do her any favors at all whatsoever. We had a great time. We ended up hanging out at this bar called Shorty's Place, which is right down the street, which I have zero issue plugging that place because people watching was amazing. Nice little cool indoor-outdoor vibe with in Florida, you got to do that. The weather was perfect, so we thoroughly.
Yeah, it was spectacular, actually. Yeah, it was wide open. The people watching, like you said, it was worth the price of admission, which was free. There was there were some characters in there. It was awesome, man. It was fun. Drinking with Derek is fun. If you guys don't know, you should do it.
We went through a couple of bars. It was a joyous time to be had by everyone. It was. Now, before I go any further, I found this. I don't know why, because I've been digging stuff out, cleaning things out of my house here because. The pandemic forces you to do things that you normally wouldn't do. And so I found this deck of cards from the MGM, and so I'm just going to deal you a hand of blackjack, and let's see how you do. All right.
Oh,
So
all right.
So I'm going to be the dealer, and so you've got. Let's see. You've got. Let's see. You've got. You got a good hand. You got 18.
Oh, all right.
And I, the dealer, I have. In typical Vegas fashion, I have 19, and you're screwed. Okay. Wasn't that fun? Welcome to gambling in Las Vegas.
Man, well, that sucks. That's why
you were so close. You were right there. If I were you, I'd have doubled down.
Yeah. I do gamble. I do play blackjack when I can, so that's all right.
You do play blackjack?
Well, I mean, I don't gamble that much, but if I'm anywhere where there's table, that's what I go to. Yeah.
Right. Any other games that you do? You don't do craps? Do you do roulette? Do you do anything else? Or
Nah, blackjack's the only one that I have any sort of handle on the rules. The others, and I'm not someone who's going to, keep hitting the ATM. I give myself the limit and then I split. I want to win enough to keep playing. I just want to hang out,
See, that's why Vegas doesn't like people like you.
Yeah, they wouldn't like me in Vegas.
That's why they throw ATMs up every 10 feet and they charge you $25 every time you want to take money out.
Good Lord.
But you're the one who has the common sense to go, you know what? I lost $100. I'm out of here. Goodbye.
That's pretty much it. I'm boring as hell, apparently. That's what the problem is.
No, you're smart as hell is what you are. No, you're not. No, you're not boring. You know who gets boring? Being with the person who can't control themselves and then they never have any money to go out and do anything.
Right.
So, I mean, I've seen more people come to Vegas and lose like all their money the first day they get here.
Oh gosh.
And you know it's boring? Paying for their sorry ass the rest of the trip because they ran out of money in the ATM.
Yeah, that's how you lose friends, I think.
That is how you lose friends. Well, you and I had a chance to work together in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina last year. Yeah, we had an absolute blast. I'm glad that we had a chance to connect again here in Florida. And we got more of a chance to talk on this Florida trip than we did when we were in Myrtle Beach. Yeah. And I mean, first off, you're hilarious. You're out of Charlotte. You've been doing this now for how long? Comedy?
Just over 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm, so I still feel pretty new in the game, but I've advanced fairly well. Working hard, keeping my head down. But yeah. So over 6 years.
Well, you've got more business acumen and more business sense than most people in this business, because most people in this business have the business acumen of a squirrel, and they just they get the nut that they have right then and there, and they eat it, and then they go, I don't have any more nuts. And you grab a bunch of nuts and you squirrel them away, and you got a brain in your head, and so you really know how business works. But you also started at this much later than a lot of people do.
Yeah, that I think is kind of what you're seeing is, having another career, a different career, and not starting when I'm, 18 years old, young, dumb, and the way the rest of that goes. But I think I approach most things from somewhat of an academic perspective of I want to learn what I'm doing. I want to know the ins and outs before I get into it. And in spite of knowing all the ins and outs of comedy and the pitfalls, I still decided to do it. So that's ridiculous. But I love it. I love it. I think hopefully I have equal parts passion, hard work, and some business acumen. So doing my best.
Well, the fact that you came from, like I said, having another career, and we'll get into that here in just a second, again, you started in this. How old were you when you started this then?
I guess I was, how old was I? How old am I right now? Yeah, I think I was like 38 maybe.
Okay. Yeah, that's a huge difference. I mean, I started when I was 27 and I thought I was starting later than most people. But, a lot of them, you start when you're 21, 22 years old and you're like, hey, I can tell jokes. Hey, I'm funny. I'm getting paid. Oh, I can drink. Oh, they're going to hook me up with free booze. Oh, look at this. Look at all these waitresses at my disposal. Let me see what I can do to get myself in trouble. And that's not you. I mean, at least from what I've seen in the 2 weeks that we've worked together. Now, I could be completely wrong, and you're cloaking all this in a very
total train wreck. Absolutely. Yeah,
you're a mess.
Everything outside of frame right here is on fire. Actually, you can't.
Well, that thing next to Uncle Henry is your big stash of cocaine.
That's right. Mistaken. Yeah. Just pull the top off, just bury your head, and then you're wired for the next day. It's good.
See, I knew it. I knew this interview would bring this out of you. I knew you were a mess the whole
Yeah.
time, and you just cleverly disguised it the whole time.
I've just been exposed. That's right. I foolishly did that.
Well, now you're from Pennsylvania, and you started now your career before comedy, and really you're still doing it now. Is film and television and commercial work.
Yeah, that's right. So when I left Pennsylvania, I was working for a newspaper. So I got out of that. But people may not know, a newspaper is basically like one Google page that never changes. Most people don't know what a newspaper is. So they're like a dinosaur. But it's funny. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, from Pennsylvania because my brothers lived here, and I had been making short films and little things like that, and totally novice, like ridiculous garbage things that no one will ever see. But my brother just mentioned, he's like, listen, you just lost your job. Why don't you give Charlotte a try? I know they have some film stuff down here. They had just shot Shallow Hal. He's like, give it a try. And that's all I needed. And then I moved to Charlotte, and I got into the business from there. Stopped looking for other work and got into it. So, 20 years later, just about 20 years later, I've worked my way up, starting as a production assistant. I've worked in most departments, and I landed strong in the locations departments. I'm a location manager on commercials. I've done a number of movies, TV shows, sort of in the Southeast region. That's like I said, to this day, that's what I'm doing until comedy can really pay the bills full time. I don't know if I'll ever really get out of it, but because it's just a unique business, it can be a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work and stress and stuff, but it provides the flexibility for me to go to the next sort of level in comedy. That's, doing weeks with you. Most other people, if you got a job, most people can't do that. Kind of feel like I cracked the code a little bit in being able to make a pretty good living and still have something that's flexible enough that I could do a second career in comedy.
Well, now explain to the viewer right now why there was so much work in North Carolina, because people automatically think film, they think LA or New York.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and when my brother told me that, that long ago, it didn't really kind of make much sense to me. But there's a couple things that happened. So in the 90s, from what I understand, this was a big movie of the week sort of location. Those are, smaller budget TV show, that, those kinds of things. So we had some crew base, which is a big draw for production, for producers and people to bring shows to a place, is that they have a crew base, so you don't have to put everybody up. And then we have NASCAR. Charlotte is the home of NASCAR. And as you know, every year, it is a marketing machine. So all these, 40 or so drivers and their teams have to produce commercials every year because they get, turnover on who sponsors them and that kind of thing. So with that, we grew as a crew base, production, logistics and gear and all that kind of stuff grew from that. And that really spawned into, the movie people and the commercial people, and that grew into where we have a pretty solid, infrastructure for film here, from locations to, you name it, literally production designers to, all kinds of things. So that's, and then you insert the tax incentives, which came, I'm not really sure when that took off, but other states outside of New York and California really took advantage of that. We've talked before that Michigan for a while had it. I know Louisiana had a pretty strong tax incentives. Georgia now has the most aggressive tax incentive. And North Carolina was a top 3 for a while. So that's why we were getting the work, the combination of those things.
Yeah, because people also forget about the geography of North Carolina. You can go to the coast, you can shoot coastal scenes, you can shoot mountain scenes in Western North Carolina, in Asheville, and then you just have the rolling countryside in Charlotte. So the variance that you have in places that you can go to right there in North Carolina, like you said, on top of the incredible tax incentives that are out there, which is which is great.
No, you really nailed it. Actually, that's a huge plus for what North Carolina has to offer. I've literally been on shows where we shoot part of it is up in the mountains. We've got a metropolitan look in Charlotte, the downtown, albeit not as large as in New York or whatever. But there's a lot of movie magic to be made. And like I said, get to the coast. I shot Leatherheads was a movie that I worked on. We shot that from Greenville, South Carolina, up to Winston-Salem, through the mountains. We were in states where we were in all over the place. They wanted different fields, different eras, because it's like a period movie. So we had a bunch of different locations to choose from in a very short sort of distance. So it was pretty exciting.
Now, that was the George Clooney movie.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, then George Clooney, he directed that. So as a location manager, we work with kind of the position came out of the producer's role. I want to say in the 80s, the producer's roles was sort of changing and evolving, and locations and logistics and all that is what the producers were responsible for. And as that job changed, they just started pulling people out and giving them these tasks of handling locations. Fast forward, another 10 years or so, and you have the location manager, who's now, if I'm not mistaken, I heard there's a conversation about having them in the Academy Awards and that now, because of how much of an impact they can have on movies and things like that. So that's still
now. Can I retro nominate you?
You can, yeah, absolutely. I'll take that.
All right, Academy, listen, yeah. Jason Allen King, pay attention. Tell me your experience in working with George Clooney. That was we were hanging out in Florida, and you had a great story about working and meeting him.
Yeah, so I'm not at all bashful to say that George Clooney is one of the most impressive human beings that I've ever worked with. And just in terms of his presence, there's gravitas about that guy that is really, really impressive. He's a guy who never forgets a name.
See, now you told me that I was the most impressive person that you worked with. I don't know how many drinks you were in at that point in the evening. I think that was Friday night, if I'm not mistaken. So
listen,
I feel a little slighted now, but continue with your story. George Clooney, man crush, continue. Go ahead.
We were probably doing shots. I don't know what was happening, but yeah, he was just a really, really impressive guy. And also, he's an exceptionally handsome guy. I'm not even afraid to say that. That guy walked in the room. You don't even have to be looking at the door. You're like, something beautiful just happened. What was that? He walks. He's so just top to bottom. The guy's awesome, and he's super funny and cracking up. So, well, I wasn't the manager of that show, but I was in that department. So we work with the directors, and we do a thing called a tech scout, and that means you get all your department heads and their necessary people. And for this show, we chartered a bus. And we had about 45 people or so. And my job is to go to each location before the bus gets there, get it open, get the lights on, get access that we need, that kind of thing. So this particular place, we need to go to the roof of this building, because we're actually shooting a hotel right next door. And if you watch the movie, they jump out of a window, and some of that is shot from the other side of the roof. So we're like, we need to get access up there. It was sort of a last minute thing, because we were going to go into the building. Long story short, my boss tasks me with get us to the roof, talk to the owner. The only way to get to the roof is from the inside of the building, 20-foot ladder up a hole in the ceiling. And hindsight, maybe not the best decision in the world, but I'm like, but everyone gets off the bus, like, we need to get to the roof, follow me. And I take everybody, march these 45 people up there to a ladder with a hole in the roof. And my boss is like, okay, go ahead, So I'm like, oh my God. So I start climbing the ladder. George Clooney, being the bright man that he is, was like, everybody else just wait here. We'll go look at it first, and then you guys come up, because he could tell. I mean, the ladder is about 1.5 inches, into the ceiling there. It's just a mistake all over the place, but I'm, dumb. So I go up. It's me and George Clooney are climbing this rickety ladder. It's shaking, and all I could think in my brain is, I'm going to be known as the guy who killed George Clooney. I'm the guy who did it. This knucklehead in Statesville, North Carolina, killed the most famous actor of our time. Okay, good stuff, Jace. Your parents are going to be proud. So I'm going up into the roof at this point. I mean, there are rusted nails sticking out, pieces of wood. There was a leg or something up there. I don't know. I can barely squeeze through the top of this thing. to get onto the roof. Half of it's like falling in on the other side. And here comes George Clooney behind me. I'm on the roof looking at George Clooney, trying to avoid it. It was just awful, but also it's George Clooney, so it was amazing. He climbs out. I help him up, and I was like, hey, I don't know if you remember, I'm Jason. He's like, yeah, I know. He's like, I'm George. So we have this time on the roof.
Like he needed to introduce himself.
Right, and he did. He did. I remember so specifically looking up at me like, yeah, I'm George. Amen. So we take this time, we walk over by the edge, and we're talking, and all I could think is there's people looking out the window going, is that George Clooney on the roof of the building with that little guy up there? And yeah, man, it was the coolest, 10 minutes of shooting the shit, talking about movies in this scene with George Clooney. And then we look over, and apparently some people got brave and they start climbing up the ladder, and you see their heads sticking out on the top of the roof. So me and George just start, spitballing jokes at the miracle of childbirth as grown men are trying to squeeze their fat asses out the top of this thing. We're like, just birthing is gross. Look at this. You don't always get the one you want, jokes like that. The guy's hysterical. So, yeah.
How did so you have 45 people that are coming to do this location scout. How come there needs to be 45 people? How come there's just not like 4 people?
Well, filmmaking is like organized chaos, right? For the people who haven't been on a set or if you've just driven by it, it looks like someone kicked an ant pile and everyone's going crazy and running around or whatever. And what you don't see, from the 30,000 feet or, is each department is doing work. So the scramble you see is just a whole bunch of different departments doing their thing. So on a tech scout, each department is going there with a specific purpose. So your art department, your production designer is going to be there, but he needs his art director to be there. He needs to draw and get information for his crew to build whatever they need to build, manufacture whatever it is. And then a buyer might need to be there to know what's there, what they need to buy for it. That may come down from a department head or not, I don't know. Just depends. You have a set decorator who needs to be there to know, what they need to dress. Sometimes going there later may not be as valuable as hearing the director specifically talk about the scene, hearing the production designer talk about it so everyone knows what you're talking about. So that art department may have, 4 or 5 people there. Same goes for, the locations guys. We all need to be there and know. Part of the locations department is we have a vested interest in what every department needs because we have to provide that for them when they get there. I mean, whether it's power or a place to park or gear or access to other properties around it to put gear or to put lights. You shoot on a city street, like we're having an impact on everybody on that street. So we got to do deals and insurance and again, access to whatever it might be. So once you do that for each department, the lighting team, they need the director of photography, the gaffer, the best boy, the key grip, and those guys need to take all that information. So when you kind of keep expanding on that and all these different departments, suddenly it's 40 some people later, So
now so your work was really going in ahead of time and getting everything squared away. So when the actual shooting was taking place, were you involved with any of the actors in the productions during the actual shooting itself?
Yeah. So again, this is locations why I actually do like it. It's not the sexiest role, but it's a definitely important role and one a lot of people don't want. But it changes depending on as the show goes on. You start out in a very creative capacity and talking with the director, producer, production designers on what they want and what they can have. Right? We want a tree-lined street, with a big white house at the end of it or whatever. You can write that, because you had that in a place growing up, but you're filming here. So does that exist? So it may not be that exact thing that ultimately you find. It may be something that is a beautiful house that has, maybe not tree line, but a big, huge field. And there's something aesthetically interesting. So you have an impact then on what it ultimately ends up being. Or you provide them with a blank slate of a place where they can literally create what they wanted. So that's the beginning of the job in terms of the creativity there. Then it becomes a logistics job, and that is anything that a film crew sees or touches, parks on, whatever, is my responsibility, is our department's responsibility. So, you know, police, security overnight and during filming, you know,
DOT, people don't think about that. Like you and I were talking, you said, you know, you've got to sit there and coordinate all these people coming in for a production. It's like, where do they park? Where can you plug into? Where do they go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Where,
bathroom?
You know,
where do they eat?
Where, you know, where's costuming? Where are all these trailers going to go? Where are these lights going to go? Where can we, you know, get the shots themselves?
Yep. No two locations are ever the same. That's the other thing. It's like there's no like, well, you go here and then you do this and that. It's like, yeah, but there's no parking lot here. Do we need to create a parking lot, or do we need to get buses to get people over here? You know, it's like we have a crew of 250 people, but then we've got you know, this one we were talking about Hunger Games. I did the first Hunger Games movie. We had 1,000 extras for about a week.
Before we go into Hunger Games,
yeah,
you get another hand of Blackjack.
Oh, all right, great, excellent.
Here we go. Let's see. Here we're gonna do here. Let's see what you got. You have 10.
Okay.
All right, and I have a 2 showing. So what are you gonna do?
I mean, I'm definitely gonna say hit me, right? But
you can hit, or you can double down.
You can double down is what I thought you would say. See, to me, I'm a wimp, and I would just say hit me. But
you can say hit. Okay, you take a hit. Here's your hit card. Oh, look at that, 18.
All right.
That's a pretty tasty hand. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, so I've got a 2 showing. I got 2 showing, and then I got a 4. So you got 18. So now I'm going to go ahead and take 1, and I get a 9. So that's 15. So you're looking good because I got a hit, and hey, you win! Look at that.
Look at that. Okay. All right,
one. That's how Vegas works. You lose 1, then they tease you with 1. So now you think the tide's going to turn. So now, back to the Hunger Games. That franchise was huge,
crazy,
insane. So when you get this project to go ahead and do location scouting for the Hunger Games, was it something you're like, okay, it's a job, or did you look at this? Did they show you the script and you get a chance to read it, or do you get a feel for what this movie is about and you go, oh, this could be something huge?
You know what? Something that big, they offer you a job. You don't get the script and decide whether or not you want to do it. It's like this is what the job is, and are you available these dates? And it's, you know, and obviously you talk about your rate and the things like that. But
right.
Yeah, that's not one where they're not. At least for someone in my position, they're not coaxing me to the job. This is a job. I'm a below the line guy. You know.
But did you know, or did you have a feeling when this thing started that you're like, oh, this is going to be huge?
Gotcha. Well, I was familiar. I didn't read the books, but I was familiar with the books and the success of those books. So I knew that it was going to be a big deal and a big movie. You know, I knew of the director. That's another. There's a couple tells. It's like, all right, well, who's in it? It's like Gary Ross is the director. And it's like, oh, okay, this is a huge movie. You know, and I do remember there was a couple places. One in particular, there was a buzz about the movie where I went to, what was it? There's a museum here in town. We ended up filming in. And I was like, hey, I'm scouting for a movie, and I wasn't at liberty to say what the movie was. They wanted to keep it under wraps. Sometimes they create fake names and things like that. This one, they just were like, don't tell anybody what it is. And the girl called it. She was like, this is the Hunger Games movie, and she's like that. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not really allowed to say anything about that. I can't say anything at all about whether or not, you know, but that's true. So I knew it was a big deal. I knew the budget was a big deal. I knew the location manager on it has done everything. So yeah, I knew it was going to be a big show.
So what did you have to do? So you go in and you were telling the story where you had to go into that was like it was this property that had like a bunch of old warehouses.
Yeah. Yep. So we shot, so about the first 30 minutes of the movie, people know in the books, is basically the reaping. It's like the whole introduction of the world and District 12 and, you know, that whole thing. So we ultimately found this place in Shelby where there was turn of the century into the 20s and 30s, I think, old warehouse building, corrugated metal, and some of them were more stout than that. These were textile mills, basically, and there was a variety of different style of buildings. Some of them were just monsters. These old buildings that there's not much going on in them now. They're mainly storage facilities and things like that. And yeah, so we went there and they saw in the middle of this, huge crop of these buildings. They said, this is it. This is the main scene. This is where they're going to get on the train and go to the Capitol. And this is where the reaping is going to take place. They're like, except for this one building that's right here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut that in half. And then we're going to blah, 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 blah. And it's like, sorry, what? We're going to do what? Yeah, we're going to cut this building in half here. And I could just hear the location manager, to going to the owner. We're going to cut your building in half and we're going to leave it like that. It's just mind blowing to me, almost the audacity of the film crew to come in and just the production design. How does that just knocks me out every time I hear it. The vision of people at that level is really, really impressive. That is like, that's where you think it's like, this is art. This really is this kind of thing. You can call it a young person's, a young adult novel, whatever it is, but what they did on that was super impressive. So that task, that area was put on me to manage the locations and deal with these people. Once they got with, cutting the building in half, there's, 20 or so power lines coming into this place, like huge poles, clusters of them, big, the whatever the hell they're called, the big boxes on them.
Stuff like that.
Transformers, and there's literally like 30 buildings here that these things are all powering. And it's coming off of, it was huge. And the product, just in passing, was like, yeah, we need all these gone. We need all these gone from here, and yada, yada, yada. And he leaves, and I'm standing there with the boss. And I was like, hey, he wants these gone? Like, as in the power to be not here? And I don't get, yeah, he's like, all the pose, all that. He's like, yeah, they all need to go. It's like, all right, how do you do that? Like, what? This guy's been doing it forever. He's been doing this, he's done the biggest movies. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. Good luck with that, though. And he was like, out of there. I'm literally standing there with all this crew and stuff, starting to do work and stuff. I'm like, all right, I got to figure out how to do this shit. Okay, here we go. And it was ground up. Call the power company and say, yeah, this is what we want to do. And no, it's not really an option for me. So let's be cool about how we figure out how to do this. And I got to give Duke Power credit that they did not, I mean, once the laughter stopped, they were like, okay, let's see how we can actually do this. And while it was an expensive thing to do, it was impressive. It was impressive to get that done, to watch them cut the building in half, to see that wasn't a creative decision I made, somebody else made it. And then after it was all gone, you saw what you saw. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. It was impressive.
So somebody owns this property that you guys went on and shot this production. Yeah. So this is somebody's building. Yeah. And you're going to go, yeah, we're going to cut this thing in half. Now, at that point in time, does the guy go, no, you're not? Or it's like, hey, we're going to cut the building in half. However, here is your prize. And then this is how much we are going to pay you to cut said building in half. Or was the guy like, go ahead and trash it. It was my ex-wife's. I could care less.
Right. There was, I would say it's probably a little bit of all of that. I wasn't in for that particular conversation, but I've had similar conversations with people. The power lines being one of them with the same person, and this guy who was the man who owns the property and his family and stuff. I mean, you work with someone like this for months and months and months. You get to know them really well. And a lot of times you get friendships that last a long time. And this is someone who, if I go out there, I still give him a shout if I'm going to be, working in his town or whatever. But yeah, sometimes it's like, guys, you can't do that. That's not something that I'm interested in doing for X, Y, and Z reasons. And while I never talk anybody into filming, that's as a location manager, it's just not how I handle my business. Because if you get someone in there who you coerced or convinced or sold this idea to them, and it turns out to not go well, and it's a bad experience. That's all on me, and it's an awful place to be. So I provide information. If they want to do it, then they have the information to make that decision. So in those situations, it's like, listen, here's what we want to do. This is a big deal. This is like one of the most memorable parts of this book. This is a huge deal, and here's what we need to do. And ultimately, it came back to whatever you do, put it back to the way that it was, which is a pretty standard sort of response, even though this was tall order. That created some problems because these buildings were turn of the century buildings, and there wasn't anything up to code. So we had to, that made my job that much more difficult of saying, how do we put power back to this lightning rod of a building here, but again, you do your best and you put it back to the way that it was. And we ultimately did that. And, just nobody should go check the codes for that town. Just don't put your hand on the building if it's raining, you'll be fine.
Well, we were talking about this. I mean, and I've seen all of the Hunger Games movies in the franchise. And I mean, you were talking about the number of extras that you had on the first production. You said there was like 1,000 extras.
Yeah, for those reaping scenes, because we had all the townspeople, all the young people who were sort of being sorted or whatever. I'm a Harry Potter guy, so I say sorted. We have, and then all of the soldiers, and I forget what they call them, in the white suits, the white military guys. Yeah, we had 1,000 people on top of, I think, our crew. Maybe not on site every day, but it was over 200 people. So yeah, it was a big deal. I had about a 300 by 300 square foot field that I had to, create this tent city, to where you line them up and people would go in, and down to their shoes. They had to get, period shoes for this movie and clothes. And then they had to get their hair done, and then makeup. And then how do you feed these people? We had to give them breakfast and lunch, and sometimes a dinner. And how do you light it? Because half of the stuff we did went into the evening. So, I think we had a half a dozen generators, out there working on this stuff, and had to bus them in because you can't just park 1,000 people anywhere. Super, super challenging thing. And obviously it's not just me. There's other people in my department involved with this, getting these things done. But, you become friends with rental house people and tent guys and stuff, doing this kind of work. And it was one of the most challenging and rewarding sort of things to do that. And we shot things like this that people don't think about. When we shot that, like the temperature that week was in the hundreds. And you had these soldiers were in like these, head to toe covered up helmets and masks and stuff. And we had people who were just suffering from heat stroke and passing out. We had to bring more like medics and stuff to the location. We had to get these people out of the sun, So we were putting them in these old buildings. Some of the buildings we didn't feel were safe enough, so we had to take them out of there and go. It was, you say what we do, on the day of filming, we're busy. We are very, very busy.
Did you interact with any of the stars in the movie at all? Or was it kind of passing?
A little bit, but that's not sort of my as a location manager, my impact for them is so much more. All my work's done before we get there in that respect. I'll bump into them at the craft service table or at lunch or something like that. If they have a specific question or a need or something like that, they'll ask me, things like that. But most of the time, I'm not up near the camera very much. I don't need to.
You were very fortunate to tell me about working with obviously George Clooney and having a great experience with him. But you said Talladega Knights.
Yeah.
You worked on as well with Will Ferrell.
Yep. That was one of the best. That was one of the best experiences that I've ever had on a movie. That one, because that was a huge budget. That was a huge movie, like comparable to Leatherhead and these other movies. And there was more cameos and stars coming in and out of that. And I had actually worked with Will quite a bit on that, just because of we were filming at NASCAR races. So NASCAR races have a lot more security than you would think. And we got these really special sort of clearances and things. So when getting people to and from places, I found myself, being the guy to take them here and there. And there's not, I don't really, I get starstruck a little bit, like I'm, human or whatever, but there's nothing better than a moment of walking Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly out to basically from our base camp in the middle of the track out to the track to get them on a cart to drive them over so Will Ferrell can take all of his clothes off except for his underwear, running around screaming about Oprah and Tom Cruise, if you remember that scene. I remember walking with them, a couple guys come running up, and they're like, that's Chess Rockwell. That's Chess Rockwell. They come running up. I'm like, sorry, guys. I got to get him to set. And Will and John were both just like, it's fine. Let's sign a couple autographs, took a couple pictures, like literally on our way to get them in their scene. It was just crazy. And by the way, the director of that, not only is it Will Ferrell, but Adam McKay directed it, who's a director for SNL. He's written, so many things. Watching those two guys work together, it was just as a master class in like watching. They would do the scene, and then Adam in the middle of the scene, Adam McKay would be like, say you want to fuck a donkey or something. And then Will just does it in the scene, and then, the next thing is they just start kicking these lines back and forth. And Adam McKay's the funniest guy in the world, man. He was amazing to watch him do that. And then, it's now with his new movie coming out, Sacha Baron Cohen was on that. So watching him like do his thing as a comedian, and that this is before I even got into doing comedy. Watching this stuff, you're just like taking notes. It's like, how is this? How are these guys doing this? It's amazing.
Well, and a lot of stuff too that goes into, obviously movies are huge, but when you look at TV shows, like you were involved in Homeland, which was shot in North Carolina as well. And we were talking about the episodes where for a location manager, that is nonstop for you because so how long was, so was the whole series shot in North Carolina?
No, so we did. All right. So it was kind of broken up. So the first 3 seasons were all done in North Carolina, but they always had one trip, and it seemed to be the first like episode each one. They were going to I think they filmed in Morocco. I think they were in Israel, South America, or I can't remember where else, but they would have these 1 or 2 where they would go and get these sort of epic, scenes where they're in all these places. But very
exotic locations like Cleveland.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they needed more security in Cleveland than they did in Morocco, though. So we shot the first 3 seasons, which were, if you know the show, were I would say the authentic to what Homeland was in terms of its the hook of the show. We'll say that. Later, it became just more of a cloak and dagger, CIA kind of terrorist kind of show. So we did those first 3 in Charlotte, and it was supposed to read as DC. We had Langley. We had a building that played as Langley here, interior, and they had footage from the exterior helicopter shots around it, and then we would kind of punch into being on the ground outside or inside, which was a big piece of the puzzle there. But yeah, it was fascinating to be around Charlotte and read message boards. People would be watching the show, and it was a good sell unless you lived in DC. And then they were like, wait, that's not, where is that? That's not here. We don't have those kind of trees on that road, Like I did all kinds of stuff. I found a location that we did the base of the Washington Monument. So if you've been there and you know kind of what it looks like, we found a pretty decent location where they superimposed like it in the background, and it worked out really well. It's kind of challenging. We did one. We had to find what was it called? It was an Iraqi mountain. There's a name for the home, like an Iraqi mountain home. And we took this old gas station that had these specific kind of way they built the walls or whatever. And the production designer saw it and was like, we can do this. We just need to like paint this and whatever. And and they just crushed it. It was super impressive. The scene where the thing blows up and everything. And the movie magic that I saw in that show, that was the people who ran that were just this really, really smart. I mean, it was like working with just the best, man. But you were asking about the schedule, which is why I don't really do it anymore. You're on that for 7 months, 8 months, more or less, depending on what you're doing. And some departments, I think, have a harder time because with locations, you have a prep, you have a shoot, and then you have a wrap, which means just because the crew is the shooting crew has walked away, it doesn't mean there's not more work to be done at this location. You got to make sure we didn't break anything. We have to clean stuff, all those other things. And, you shoot an episode in between 8 and 10 days, depending. And that's a lot to do when you got 20 locations in that amount of time, and that it just, I was working 16, 17 hours a day, usually 6 days a week for that amount of time. And by the end of it, you're a nub. There's just nothing left. It's the most grueling work I've ever done. And you're wealthy at the end of it, but you are, because you haven't spent any of it, because you have no time to do anything or see anybody. So both some of the most amazing times I've ever had, the hardest work I've ever done. I've also learned, I mean, to me, it's like, I guess I was fine. I don't think I was the best at it, if I'm being perfectly honest. I'm not gonna tout myself as the best location manager in the world, but not on TV shows. It was just that level of detail and how quickly you need to work, and that is just grueling and exciting. And also, there's a lot of shitty things about film too. So,
well, now also when you see these actors, I got to ask you this, and you obviously weren't involved in a lot of stuff where the day-to-day production with the filming of the stars. Mm-hmm. And they always end up having the stars come on some talk show, and they're like, "Oh, it was a wonderful experience. Everybody gets along. We all hug and kiss, and we in the morning, and we all do shots of whiskey after the production's over, and then we all hop on our planes and fly back to LA, New York, or wherever." And I know that has got to be complete garbage.
Sure.
Now, obviously, without mentioning names in particular, is there any particular production where you went, "I can't believe these people didn't murder everyone"?
I will say that even on a show like Homeland, which was, to me, is as well a run show, the producers and the directors and the people in that, I think, were top-notch A+ people, and I don't have anything negative to really say about that. But I will say that film sets are, not just from the actors, are ripe with ego, and that is that's just not a really good thing. So there's a lot of flex and a lot of that stuff, and that I don't miss doing those bigger productions. I do more commercial work now because of flexibility for comedy, and that's great. Some of those bigger shows, yeah, there's definitely some grossness to them, in my opinion, that I don't miss, but I'm sure you have that in every business, so we might not be that different. But I will say, like Claire Danes, I mean, she won a couple of Emmys on that show. I don't have a bad thing to say about her or I'm forgetting his name, and he was awesome. The lead male character on that, and all of them. I mean, that they were pretty fantastic. There wasn't any issues. I didn't see any fights. There was no blow-ups between them and the director. It was that show was humming, and I think the people at the top were so good that I think that's why. Claire Danes is an absolute pro. She was a focused person and did her job, and yeah, I made her laugh at the at the craft service table once, and I was like, I can leave the show now. I got Claire to laugh. I'll be fine. It was a joke about Doritos. I don't want to tell it, but it was really funny. So,
well, I mean, you would need to have a good crew, a good staff, a good group of actors that have a good cohesive bond in terms of having something be that successful as Homeland was. Because I can see certain productions where somebody is not getting along with somebody else, and it's a couple of stars, and they're like, "Look, this is just not worth the pain in the ass factor of dealing with you douchebags. We're done."
Yeah, when you're working that closely, this is one thing I will give sort of film crews credit, that you're working so closely for so many hours for so long, you are going to know people intimately at the end of that. through that. You're going through things together. As good a show is, you're going to have bad nights. You're going to have rainy, shitty days. You're going to have all those things. And, if you can't put up with the person next to you, that's going to show. Those seams are going to rip, and it's not going to be good. And that's why, some people leave shows. Some people just get fed up and they don't want to be there anymore. I haven't seen a lot with actors not getting along. I will say I worked on a movie with, who was the guy who played the director, 9.5 Weeks. I could look it up. I'm forgetting his name right now.
Who it is?
He's like a monster. I'm gonna look it up. He's the worst human being I've ever worked with. Oh yeah, I'm looking it up right now. I forget his name. And the rest. Come on. Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
That guy is a piece of shit. I don't mind saying that. I probably shouldn't. But that guy was the worst. He would literally yell at the crew and tell them to fuck off and do all kinds of shit. He was the worst dude I've ever worked with. I have no problem saying it, actually.
I've heard stories about him. I mean, obviously I've never met the guy, but I've heard multiple stories about, they're like, yeah, no, he's got to go.
Yeah, it was awful. He just was unkind. And that's why I don't have a problem saying anything bad about him. He was mean to crew members. They rented him a car, and he was all in the box, and he punched dents all over this car that they rented for him. It was just like he would change. I remember one time he changed clothes on a sidewalk down to his underwear. There's like families and shit around. Everyone's just like, someone go cover this guy up. I mean, he just had he just didn't give a shit about anybody in around him. It was just
what was this on? What was this production?
I'd rather not say the movie. Actually.
Got it.
I like the people who worked on it. Everyone was great, and I don't want to
Got it.
in the movie, but Mickey Rourke was a dick. He just was.
But it was a movie where Mickey Rourke was in it.
Yeah. You can go find it. But
it was shot in North Carolina. So Google Mickey Rourke movie, North Carolina, naked on sidewalk.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing was, everybody else in the movie was great. All the other people who were in it, they were just really cool. And he just was just shitty. I'm not sure how all that worked out, but
now I gotta go ahead and Google this as soon as we get off recording here.
Well, you know who was in Renee Zellweger was in Leatherheads, right? And here's the example of it. She was such a lovely person to be around. She brought everybody on the crew iPads. Not iPad. They play the music. iPods. And this is years ago. Everybody came out of all iPods, little engraved with the name of the movie and stuff. Like, that's the difference of people that we're talking about. Like, some of them are so gracious, and anyone who says that actors don't work for a living, all that shit's just way, way, way wrong. That is not an easy thing that they do. Grueling hours and what they're put through, it's really, really challenging. And yet someone like that, her and George, were just, to me, just delightful human beings who just know and value everybody from what they're doing. You got this other Yahoo who's just screaming at people, telling them he was just kind of a monster. I didn't see that very much.
He's been given a lot of chances.
Yeah.
I mean, he's resurrected and he looks like he's been resurrected from the dead based on that plastic surgery. I mean,
he's a mess. And that's the thing. I can also acknowledge that his role in The Wrestler was amazing. His performance in that is spectacular. That movie's awesome. Doesn't mean he wasn't a dick on the movie that I was on with him. So
right.
Yeah.
So Google Mickey Rourke movie, North Carolina, and you'll get this all figured out.
Yeah, that's right.
One last hand of blackjack as I deal this to you. Let me ask you this: Is White Claw the downfall of Western civilization?
Oh man, on a hot day, I don't mind a White Claw, so I got to say no.
Okay, all right. Well, let's see if you're.
How many people did I just lose right there? How many?
I 3 15-year-old girls. So. Who love Mickey Rourke. They were already tuned out anyway.
Oh, God. Yeah, they were done.
Crapping on their favorite actor of all time. Your cards.
Look at
that. And I got a jack showing. So let's see what's going to happen here. Oh, and welcome. That's your classic Vegas experience. You had 19, dealer had 20. Jason Allen King, buddy, So much fun working with you. Always good talking to you. And people need to see you live. You are absolutely hysterical. JasonAllenKing.com. Find out where he's playing. Go and say hi to this sexy man and buy him a White Claw.
Yeah, I drink it all. Buy me anything you want. It doesn't have to be White Claw.
You're great, buddy. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it, brother.
Derek, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on. Take care, man.